Welcome to a journey into Genesis 3, the story of the fall of man. Imagine a world of perfect harmony. No shame, no pain, just Adam and Eve walking with God in the Garden of Eden. But in one chapter, a single choice changes everything, introducing temptation, consequences, and a profound hope. Today, we'll dive deep into every verse, explore the ancient context, unpack rich theological insights, and find lessons for our lives. We'll also pause for a motivational reflection to inspire you to overcome your own challenges. Whether you're here to deepen your faith, study the Bible, or discover a timeless story, this video is for you. If this resonates, please hit the subscribe button. Drop a comment with your thoughts on Genesis 3 and share this video with someone who'd love to join us. Your support helps us keep exploring these powerful stories. Let's step into Eden and begin. Genesis 3, the fall of man. Genesis 3 follows the creation accounts of Genesis 1 and 2, where God crafts a perfect world and places Adam and Eve in a paradise garden. They have freedom, abundance, and one command: don't eat from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. This chapter is about trust, choice, and what happens when things go wrong. Let's set the scene and dive into the story. To bring Genesis 3 to life, let's step into its ancient world. Likely written for the Israelites around 1400 to 1200 BCE, Genesis spoke to a people forming their faith amid rival cultures. The Babylonians told creation stories like the Enuma Elish, with gods battling chaos. Genesis stands apart, proclaiming one God, Yahweh, who creates with purpose and love. The Garden of Eden is a sacred space, like a temple where God and humanity connect. In ancient cultures, gardens symbolize divine abundance and presence. The serpent carries deep meaning. In the Near East, serpents often represented wisdom, chaos, or divine power. Here is the craftiest creature, poised to deceive. The tree of the knowledge of good and evil symbolizes a choice: trust God's wisdom or seek to define good and evil independently. And no, the fruit wasn't an apple. That's a later myth, possibly from the Latin malum, meaning both apple and evil. Rooted in its ancient context, Genesis 3 uses these symbols to teach about trust, temptation, and the human heart. Let's see how the story unfolds. Let's walk through Genesis 3 verse by verse using the World English Bible. Picture Eden, rivers flowing, trees bursting with fruit, Adam and Eve in perfect harmony. But a shadow emerges. Verses 1 to 3, the serpent's question. Now the serpent was more subtle than any animal of the field which Yahweh God had made. He said to the woman, has God really said, you shall not eat of any tree of the garden? The serpent's cunning question twists God's command, suggesting restriction where there was freedom. Eve responds, we may eat fruit from the trees of the garden, but of the fruit of the tree which is in the middle of the garden, God has said, you shall not eat of it, neither shall you touch it, lest you die. Eve's addition, neither shall you touch it, hints at uncertainty, opening the door to doubt. Verses 4 to 5, the lie the serpent says, you won't surely die, for God knows that in the day you eat it, your eyes will be opened, and you will be like God, knowing good and evil. This is temptation strategy: deny consequences, question God's goodness, and promise power. The serpent paints God as withholding something wonderful. Verses 6 to 7, the fall, the woman saw that the tree was good for food, and that it was a delight to the eyes, and that the tree was to be desired to make one wise. She took some of its fruit and ate, and she gave some to her husband with her, and he ate. The fruit appeals to body, eyes, and mind. Eve eats, and Adam right beside her joins in. Then the eyes of both of them were opened, and they knew that they were naked. They sewed fig leaves together and made coverings for themselves. Shame floods in, replacing innocence. They scrambled to cover their vulnerability. Verses 8 to 10, hiding from God. They heard the voice of Yahweh God walking in the garden in the cool of the day, and the man and his wife hid themselves from the presence of Yahweh God among the trees of the garden. God's presence, once a joy, now sparks fear. Yahweh God called to the man, where are you? God knows where they are. His question invites confession.
Adam says, I heard your voice in the garden, and I was afraid because I was naked and I hid myself.
Verses 11 and 13, the blame game. God asks,
who told you that you were naked? Have you eaten from the tree that I commanded you not to eat from?
Adam replies, the woman whom you gave to be with me, she gave me fruit from the tree and I ate. He blames Eve and even God. Eve says, the serpent deceived me and I ate. No one takes responsibility, deepening the fracture. Verses 14 to 15, the serpent's curse, God says to the serpent, because you have done this, you are cursed above all livestock and above every animal of the field. You shall go on your belly, and you shall eat dust all the days of your life. I will put enmity between you and the woman, and between your offspring and her offspring. He will bruise your head, and you will bruise his heel. The serpent is humbled, and a future victory is promised. Verses 16 to 19, consequences for Eve and Adam to Eve. I will greatly multiply your pain in childbirth. In pain you will bear children. Your desire will be for your husband, and he will rule over you. Life-giving becomes painful, and relationships face tension. To Adam, because you have listened to your wife's voice, and have eaten from the tree about which I commanded you, saying, you shall not eat of it, cursed is the ground for your sake. In toil you will eat of it all the days of your life. Thorns and thistles would it produce for you. By the sweat of your face you will eat bread until you return to the ground. Work becomes toil, and mortality is confirmed. Verses 20-24, mercy and banishment. The man called his wife Eve because she was the mother of all living. Adam's naming reflects hope. Yahweh God made coats of animal skins for Adam and for his wife and clothed them. God's care covers their shame. But then Yahweh God said, behold, the man has become like one of us, knowing good and evil. Now lest he reach out his hand and also take of the tree of life and eat and live forever. Yahweh God sent him out from the Garden of Eden to till the ground from which he was taken. God expels him to prevent eternal life in a fallen state, placing cherubim and a flaming sword to guard the tree of life. Genesis 3 is a theological cornerstone, revealing profound truths about God, humanity, and the world. Let's explore its key themes. The nature of sin. Sin enters in Genesis 3 not as a violent act, but as a subtle choice. The serpent's temptation begins with a question, has God really said? Sowing doubt about God's trustworthiness. This doubt leads to disobedience as Adam and Eve seek to define good and evil for themselves. Sin, at its core, is a rejection of God's authority, a desire to be autonomous. It's not just about breaking a rule, it's about breaking trust. The Hebrew word for sin, chada, means to miss the mark. Adam and Eve missed the mark of God's design, choosing self over submission. This teaches us that sin often starts small, doubt, pride, or desire, but its effects ripple outward, disrupting harmony with God, others, and creation. Free will and responsibility. The tree of the knowledge of good and evil represents free will. God gave Adam and Eve the freedom to choose, because love and obedience are meaningless without choice. The tree was a test of trust. Would they rely on God's wisdom or seek their own? Their choice to eat shows the weight of free will. It carries consequences. The blame game, Adam pointing to Eve, Eve to the serpent, reveals humanity's tendency to evade responsibility. Yet God holds each accountable, showing that free will comes with the duty to own our actions. This challenges us to consider our choices. Do we trust God's boundaries, or do we redefine truth to suit our desires? God's justice and mercy. God's response in Genesis 3 balances justice and mercy. The curses are just. The serpent is humbled. Eve faces pain in childbirth, and Adam toils against a resistant earth. These reflect a world fractured by sin, where life is no longer effortless. Yet God's mercy shines through. He clothes Adam and Eve with animal skins, a practical act that also symbolizes covering their shame. This foreshadows later biblical themes of atonement, where God provides a covering for sin. The expulsion from Eden is merciful too. Living forever in a fallen state would be a curse, not a blessing. God's justice upholds His holiness, but His mercy preserves humanity's hope. The Protoevangelium, a promise of redemption, verse 15, is pivotal. I will put enmity between you and the woman, and between your offspring and her offspring. He will bruise your head, and you will bruise his heel. This verse, often called the Protoevangelium or First Gospel, hints at a future victory over evil. The offspring of the woman is interpreted by many Christians as a prophecy of Jesus, who defeats sin and death, though not without suffering the bruised heel. The serpent's identity, whether a literal creature, a symbol of chaos, or Satan, as Revelation 12 verse 9 suggests, points to a cosmic conflict. This promise shows that God's plan for redemption begins the moment sin enters, revealing His sovereignty and grace. The fall's lasting impact. The fall reshapes every aspect of existence. Shame replaces innocence as Adam and Eve hide from God. Relationships fracture. Adam and Eve's blame game foreshadows conflict in human connections. The curse on the ground introduces struggle in the work, reflecting a creation out of sync with God's design. Mortality, to dust you shall return, marks humanity's new reality. Yet these consequences aren't arbitrary. They flow from the choice to reject God's order. Theologically, Genesis 3 introduces original sin, the idea that humanity inherits a fallen nature, prone to sin yet still bearing God's image. This sets the stage for the Bible's narrative of redemption, from the covenants with Abraham to the coming of Christ. Theological questions. Genesis 3 raises deep questions. Why did God allow the serpent to tempt? It underscores free will. Without the possibility of disobedience, trust is not genuine. Is the story literal or symbolic? Some see it as historical, others as a theological narrative. Both views affirm its truth about human nature and God's grace. The serpent's identity, Satan, a creature or a symbol, points to the reality of evil's opposition to God. These questions invite us to wrestle with the text, seeking wisdom in its layers. Genesis 3 isn't just a story from the past, it's about you today. Adam and Eve faced temptation, and so do we. The serpent's voice, questioning, promising, deceiving, echoes in our lives. Maybe it's the pressure to chase success at the cost of integrity, the urge to compare yourself online, or the whisper that you're not enough. We've all fallen, made choices we regret, felt shame or failure. Maybe you hurt someone, taken a wrong path, or let doubt hold you back. Genesis 3 shows that falling is human, but it also shows that your fall is not your finish. Imagine Adam and Eve outside Eden, their perfect world gone. They could have given up, consumed by guilt. But their story continued. God clothed them, gave them purpose, and promised victory over the serpent. That's your story too. Your mistakes don't define you. Every day, you face temptations to give up, to settle, to believe lies about your worth. But you are stronger than those moments. You have the power to choose differently, to rise after you fall, to turn pain into growth. Think about a challenge you're facing. Maybe it's a strained relationship, a goal that feels impossible, or a regret weighing you down. Genesis 3 says there's hope. God's act of clothing Adam and Eve shows care in the midst of judgment. The promise of victory points to redemption. For believers, it's God's plan to restore. For everyone, it's a call to resilience. Your struggles shape you, not break you. Here's your challenge. Take one step toward hope today. Say no to a temptation holding you back. Forgive someone, even yourself. Keep pursuing that dream even when it's hard. Like Adam's toil, your efforts have purpose. Like Eve, your pain can lead to new beginnings. You're part of a bigger story where every choice can lead to healing and victory. Share your story in the comments. What's a temptation you've overcome, or a step you're taking toward hope? Let's inspire each other. Genesis 3 speaks to our daily lives. Temptation is everywhere. Materialism, comparison, or the urge to shift blame. Like Eve, we can pause and question deceptive voices. The blame game teaches us to own our choices and seek forgiveness, rebuilding relationships. Adam's toil shows that work, though hard, can have purpose when dedicated to something greater. The promise of hope encourages us to look beyond struggles, whether through faith or personal growth. Reflect on this. What's a temptation you face? How can you choose trust over doubt? Share your thoughts in the comments to join the conversation. Genesis 3 is a story of loss, but it's also the start of redemption. Temptation and choice brought brokenness, but God's grace offers hope. The serpent's lie led to shame and struggle, but the promise of victory points to restoration. This chapter sets the Bible's narrative in motion, from a fallen world to renewal. For us, it's a mirror. The temptations we face, the mistakes we make, and the hope we can embrace. Thank you for joining this 2-hour deep dive. If this spoke to you, please subscribe to our community. Comment with your reflections on Genesis 3 and share this video with someone who finds it meaningful. Your support keeps these stories alive. Until next time, keep choosing hope, and let's continue this journey together.